I'm going to have to mute that. Actually, I'll mute that.
I mute the stream
website.
and then keep the chat, and then that's probably a good idea.
That would make sense.
I've already lost one dungeon today to the mortal mobs.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
To specifically a mortal lord, or just second chance in general?
To the normal mortal mobs, not even the boss.
Oh, really? Is it because it's making you run out of mana as a result, or you're just dying?
I can manage the mana. It's just if I don't kill him and my defense is down, then he's got a multi-hit. They've got a multi-hit skill. I don't know what it is. It might be swordplay 1, but it just wrecks me.
Yeah, okay.
As Swash anyway.
Oh, that'd be why. Yeah. Because I run in now for regular gauntlets. I'm doing deity sequencer, so I actually turn one golems just because I have died a couple of times.
Yeah, I've had to use golems as well now.
Yeah. So I use golems, and then it's easy mode. You can just magic strikes your whole way through Ultima 16 and 25, and you're done.
Easy.
Easy peasy. Although, if you run into a mammon halfway through your run, it actually can give you mana issues, I've found.
For hard mode?
Sorry. Yeah. Try to do them in hard mode, except for the ones that I can reach from home, because the timer. So otherwise, I just try and do them all in hard mode.
Yeah. I mean, you can end up just doing Twin Blast, right? But then you need to rely on life siphon a bit.
Yeah, even attack's got some funky mechanics with I think with sequencer. I think it can't do below 2 damage, like 1/1, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for second chance ones, you can even just use attack. And even in arena, I think. Which is it's odd.
Oh well, I mean, actually Alt King Dave the Grey, he spotted this a while ago, and he used that. Yep. He used that for all his alts to do damage on all the raid bosses.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, I put it in one of the videos in the back end, and Dave was like, "Don't get this nerfed."
It's just one of those funky things that it might not ever get nerfed. It's like, I don't know, a mana potion healing you by 1 health is a funky thing that shouldn't exist, and it's likely to never change. Those little quirky things are cool, I think.
Yeah. I mean, Dave, you literally don't need any attack. You can do it with 0 attack, and you get a couple of damage in.
Right, okay. I didn't know that was a thing. Yeah.
And
so I see the sprites running along the bottom, actually. So that's the Legionnaire's you, the little thief. Is that me, is it?
Yeah. You're going to have to...
And then you can level up.
I don't know if I can...
Respira, hello.
Yeah, for next time we'll get you a decent sprite. We can get you the... What do you want? The blue
Frost
troll? Yeah.
Frost troll. See if we can twist Odie's arm into getting me one in game, hey?
But you gotta run with the mod for a few months yet, and then I'll give it to you.
I don't think I'd ask for it anyway, because he's chucked on a few mods. I think like it's opening a door that would just be difficult. He already does it with the translators as well, doesn't he?
Yeah. I mean, the translators they all get the same pack though. I mean, Stack and Hood, they've got their own unique sprites, don't they?
That makes sense. So when you kick off, does it usually take a little bit for a couple of people to join?
Yeah, and it's like the middle of the day here, and normally it'll take like 5 or 10 minutes for people to come in, but I don't know, depending on timings, some people might not come in. Whisper, how are we doing, buddy? I will just make a quick note, and then we can get started. Whisper, this is the pre-show, by the way. Subs only. Alright. Pause. Right. Respira, while you're there, can you? How does it sound? Can you hear Dangy and myself all right? If you're actually listening, if we take your word for it, then we'll actually start. All Gucci.
All good here.
Right, nice.
Awesome. Nice.
All right. Good to go, Dangy.
Good to go. Let's do it.
All right. I can't actually record, so I'm gonna have to download
At
it
the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. No, that makes sense.
All right. How's it going, everyone? Welcome to episode 1 of the Arisen Podcast with Shabbash and Modangy. How are we going, buddy?
Good, thanks, mate. How about yourself?
Yeah, not too bad, not too bad. Pissing wet here in Glasgow, to be expected, but not going to be able to go outside today. How's it going? It's pretty late on your side, right?
Yeah, so it's just hit 10 p.m. Monday night. It was a public holiday today, though, so got to lounge around home and do not much. Back to work tomorrow, and then I got a week off, or actually 3 weeks off work very soon. So pretty exciting stuff.
Oh, 3 weeks off. A nice Orna holiday.
Yeah, perhaps got a little bit on the schedule, but I haven't had a holiday in something like 18 months. Last year had some plans. 18 had some plans last year, but they got cancelled, as did everyone's. So yeah, looking forward to the break.
That'll be nice. Get a few dungeons in.
Yeah, that's it, mate. That's it.
All right. Well, I think the kind of topic list is a bit loose at the moment, but we're going to start off with Orna Journeys. Dangy, I don't think you're not so much in the public eye as a big man like myself. Apart from people who actually frequent the Discord, you're pretty huge on there. Recently got a purple name. Why don't you give us a little bit of an insight into your distinguished Orna career so far?
A little bit of Dangy trivia.
Yeah.
Can do. So I have actually been playing Orna for nearly 2 years. It'll be 2 years come... Actually, it's early July, so not quite there yet. I kicked off the 1st of July, 2019.
Oh, nice. That's actually that's actually the same kind of time period as myself, I think. End of June, early July.
Yeah, okay. There you go. So I have that timestamp because I have a message that I sent out to the boys that I played Orna with in the early days saying I found this new game, and it was sent on the 1st of July 2019. So that's the day that I started playing. I came from a background of, I did try some other GPS games first. So first game for me was Pokemon Go, which is unsurprising because I think that period around 2018, a whole heap of people were playing Pokemon Go right across the world. So it was a pretty big deal. And the element or the aspect of Pokemon Go that I really loved was actually going and seeing people in person while you played a game. So I'm a pretty social guy, and yeah, I really, really enjoyed catching up with friends and going and doing stuff together in a game on a mobile phone. But the Pokemon Go community is a little bit different to the Orna community. My experiences with the Pokemon Go community were kind of interesting. I'm not sure if you're very familiar with the mechanics of it. There's this raid system within Pokemon Go where you would go and fight a big boss to try and capture it. And it was an interesting experience going to do one of those and having random people you don't know just yell at you for not inviting them to things, and it got a little bit weird. So I decided to find a different game that had that GPS aspect, and I just did a whole heap of Googling to try and find something. Played that Ingress game for a little bit, but that's probably worse again than Pokemon Go. And then stumbled upon Orna. And the thing that drew me to Orna first off was probably the art styling. So when you're looking through the Play Store and you're looking for GPS games, that art style that Orna has really just popped to me, because I used to play the old school Final Fantasy games, which are those 8-bit / 16-bit RPG games.
Really retro.
So when I see... Yeah. So when I see that in an RPG and it's GPS based, it just it ticks so many boxes for me. I was so excited about it. So yeah, kicked off 1st of July 2019. I conned 3 friends to start playing with me. And man, that was some of the greatest times I've had playing this game. We've tried to replicate it since it's a little bit tough with these current times, but just getting 3 of us, or 4 of us, I should say, me plus 3, in a car, getting a whole heap of energy drinks and going for a drive to try and find gauntlets, or, you know, when we found a demon forge for the first time. I remember it. It was in such a weird spot and we were so excited about it. But yeah, just driving around, hitting all the world bosses. And I remember early days we would be stuck in spots trying to kill mobs to get the quests done for the day.
Yeah,
And
daily quests,
yeah, it was different back then because I think you had to, each day you had to open it again to make sure you saw the new quests, and then I think you had to pick them up. But you had to, I think you had to pick them up, but you did absolutely have to hand them in. You didn't have the auto hand in.
Yeah, that's right.
So I remember we would get to the end of the day, it'd be like nearly midnight, and we're still driving around because this is what we used to do for Pokemon, is just drive, do a million raids. And it'd be like 11:58 and we'd go, shit, our quests. And you'd just be trying to hand them all in. The game's not keeping up because the servers weren't the same as they are today. But yeah, man, it was proper fun, you know, like we were, it's not a competitive game, but the joy that you get from a game like this is pretty unique. If anyone's ever played a World of Warcraft or a Diablo or anything like that, where you're not actually competing that much against each other, you're more competing to get to milestones at the time before your friends, or get gear before your friends. So it's one of these really unique experiences where you can get really excited by the prospect of getting this cool item, and you can get absolutely gutted when you see your friend get it, when you should actually you should be thrilled for them, right? And you're like, there's not a single person that'll get a piece of gear that I want that I'll be happy for. I mean, I'll say, good on you, congratulations, that's great. But if I want it too, it's
super jealous.
Yeah. But the fact that there is always going to be something that's going to be better than what I have, unless you a major and fluke into 200% of everything. I mean that grind it's really enjoyable for me. It's a really relaxing game. I actually, early days, I didn't just have those 3 guys involved in it, which we eventually started a kingdom, the Frost Trolls. So there was myself, the Code Chaos, and Chris Bacon were the guys that I played with. We eventually conned a whole suite of people that we played Pokemon Go with in the local community to play with. So I think originally our kingdom that we started was made up of nearly 20 people that we all knew in person.
That's crazy.
So every single person in the kingdom, we knew each other, which was it was awesome. And then there's Major called out, mate. That's right. So that was really quite special, and it made the kingdom feel more like a community early days. So it was pretty awesome. And I got my wife playing it too. So that was one of the first games that we actually managed to play together, and we'd just sit down on our phones, sit at home and grind out mobs. You know, it was relaxing, it was fun, it was nice, and there's not really a whole heap of pressure attached to this game. I know that sometimes we can probably create some artificial pressure in our kingdom dynamics or whatever, but overall this is a pretty mild game in terms of obligation. So I'm really attracted to it for that reason. So kicked off nearly 2 years ago, had a break around, I think it was September till February, so I didn't play for that long. I got from 0 to, I think it was 219 or 220 from July 1 till about the end of August. So it didn't take me too long, and sort of smashed it out.
That's
the
huge,
guys the guys that I play with, we're all a bit sweaty. we like to play things seriously. Then I took a break, come back around February, and we started doing our drives again, and it was really fun. And then March, we got locked down in Australia, in Victoria. So we couldn't do our drives as much. But when we go properly, we could do 50 to 70 gauntlets in a day, just get in the car and go for a big drive. And it's good fun, man. It's just, you know, you can stop whenever you want for a feed. Go to the service station, petrol station.
Servo?
Sorry, servo.
What is
Yeah,
that?
we call it servo is a service station. Yeah, petrol station.
Gas station.
Gas
Yeah.
station for Americans. Go to a servo, get some snacks and some energy drinks, and get back in the car and go and
Next
kill a heap
dungeon.
of stuff and just laugh, and troll each other when we get that piece of gear that the other blokes want or whatever. It's good fun.
What about?
So yeah.
What about? Quick question. What about when you first started? Was there anyone who owned all the areas around you? Because I know there's an old legend in Oz, right? Azuki, right? She was in my kingdom when I first joined, and she stopped playing a while ago, but she's still on the competitive leaderboard with the amount of kingdoms. The amount of areas she owns. Like when I started playing in Glasgow, all of the areas people had already played before me, so there was not really many new areas to explore. When you first go into an area, there's not a lot there, but buildings will spawn, dungeons will spawn. So what was it like, and what kind of area we're talking about? Like how these drives, like all day drives, how far are you going?
Yep, good question. So Azuki did have a really firm grasp on Australia in general, but Australia is massive, right? We're a big country.
Yeah.
And the area that I live in isn't a city. I live 2 hours southeast of Melbourne in country town. And all of the areas around there weren't really claimed, so we'd get to see them pop up and claim them. The boys would typically get them because I would be the one driving, so they would get to claim them. It's all right, I'm getting them back there because somebody's kept playing at a
a decent level,
fast pace, and they're maybe calmed down a little bit. But yeah, there wasn't a whole heap of areas that were already claimed. We've had a couple of people, when we drive to Melbourne, there was a couple of people that we interact with still to this day who had some areas before us. So there are a couple of Aussies still kicking around. Azuki hasn't played, I think, for something in the realms of like 8 or maybe even 12 months.
Yeah, around a year or something.
She was the original like big player in Oz, because I think when we were powering through, she was already 225. Like she was right up there. This is back in the days of, Necro was the best class, and then they introduced Tier 9, and so Azuki did have a foothold on some of the cities, and then in her state, I think she was New South Wales, which is up from me, it's north. I think that she had all of it, and then all of Queensland, which is north again, and
all of Queensland.
Yeah, so our drive. So that other question on how far. So I live in a small country town that has 3 other towns close to it. Each of the towns are probably in the realms of 15 to 30 kilometers away. And I don't know the head math to convert that to miles.
About 20 miles, let's say.
Yeah, okay, there you go. So the drives themselves would take a really long time, and probably if we did it on, say, a Saturday or a Sunday, we might start at 10 a.m. and not finish until 5, 6 p.m. But that wasn't really indicative of what you'd expect today. Today, the density of dungeons is much higher. You don't have to go as far.
With the added view range.
View range helps a lot.
Yeah, I mean, view range was only introduced sort of end of summer 2020. So before then...
Yeah. It hasn't been around for long, has it?
Yeah, it's not been that long.
August or something, yeah. But, yeah, the view range helped. What helped as well is just that the account activity started to spawn more buildings.
Yeah.
So the trend we've probably noticed is the more that there are more accounts in one area, more buildings will spawn. So on our original routes, like my town that I'm in right now, it originally had, I think it was 2 to 3 gauntlets in it total. And now the lap that I do has, I think it's 32 gauntlets in it. And some of the spots, have like 3 to 4 gauntlets. And the theory there is that a couple of accounts pull up to park there to do the dungeon gauntlet, whatever, and kill a few mobs, we kind of theorized that it actually encourages that random spawns.
Building spawn, yeah.
Of stuff. So yeah, that's been the case for all of the towns that we have. Like a lot of the places that we would park for a bit have multiple dungeons now. But yeah, the drives were always massive, and the main enjoyment factor from that was not the volume that we were getting through. It was hanging out. That was always the thing that we enjoyed about it, was catching up, hanging out, going for a drive together. So whenever I have somebody new come to our kingdom, or that I see around the Discord or whatever, we had one join our Discord for the Frost Trolls today who's from Queensland. He's actually Scottish. A Scottish guy. Yeah, he's just moved to Australia. And I was talking to him and I said, mate, get a friend into it. That's my biggest piece of advice, is get a friend into it, because this is a long play game. I'm going to play it. I've played it for nearly 2 years, and I could see myself playing it for, I don't actually have an end date. You know, it might be another couple of years.
Yeah.
So you should look at this game that way. Don't look at it like your other mobile games where you pick it up and you might play it for a month. This is something that's a long play. So get a friend into it. Get them into it early so that you're at the same stage, and you can get excited about the same sort of stuff. That's like my big number one tip, because that shared excitement, which you can get from the Discord community, but there's something different about driving around with somebody right next to you, I think. Which might be a unique experience. I'm not sure.
Well, I don't know if your wife's still playing, but for me, I got my girlfriend to play, but on my account. So so I would drive, and that would allow her to play. She was playing Pokemon Go at the same time. So two phones there in the passenger seat. And to be honest, I didn't really have anyone local enough at the time to start playing. Like my colleagues, they weren't into gaming at all, so I couldn't really get anyone else involved. But in Scotland, it's a bit smaller than Oz, but there's a couple of, when I say local players, I mean kind of national players, but it's probably local compared to Australia. And I mean, myself and my partner got to the point where she would be like, right, let's go smash Boris, or let's go smash Ovlin, you know, these local guys. But I think, as you say, if you that new guy joined the Frost Trolls, if you can get a mate into it, as you said, like the progression, he's probably, I think I saw he's level 100 in a day or something, which is absolutely smashing it.
I couldn't believe it. He said that. Yeah, he said, I've just gone for a drive. I've just started today and I hit level 100. I'm like, far out. That is a solid effort. But yeah, that's, you know, you can grind it out really hard and not enjoy the game, or you can do it that way and enjoy the game. I tend to push people not to grind the levels really early on until they understand a lot of the mechanics, because you see, you know, you've been around long enough with this as well. You'll just see people cycle in and then they cycle out again. They'll hit their level 200 and then they never come back and play ever again. But that was impressive. He said he got home and he was keen to go out for a drive again. Far out.
Second time.
Level 100 in a day. It's interesting. Have you gone through your own, like, I guess, Orna journey on any of your videos previously? Is that something you could go through for us today?
No, I've not actually. It's a good, not from the beginning. Only, I would say, most recently I started up a new character and kind of went through the early game with a lot more knowledge than I did previously. I remember, as I said, back when I started around the same sort of time as yourself, I think I actually made two characters, and like the first one was a thief, and ended up using like the attack button, and I was spending ages and ages killing mobs, and I think I spent a few days getting to around level 50, probably not many upgrades, and I can remember just being scared to attack stuff. Like, I don't want to die to this guy. Actually, I remember like the fallen mobs, like the fallen warrior, fallen thief. I remember opening up the fight and them having like 400 HP compared to my 100 HP, and thinking, right, I'm not going to kill this guy. I'm not even going to bother. And then I started looking at guides, and I read somewhere, mage is OP early on or something like this. So I kind of switched. I think I just made a new character, went mage, without too much thought. So yeah. So early game, my first character, main playthrough, mage all the way up to Omnimancer. So around around mid tier 9, I was around level 214. I don't know why I have level 214 in my head, and a couple of breaks along the way, mainly due to, I think, work issues, and then I was trying. The main motivator for me was actually being able to take areas, or dukedoms as they were called back then, in my city. There was a guy, Magistrate of Rosengard. I thought that was his name. I didn't know that was.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was just, and my girlfriend was the same. We need to kill Magistrate of Rosengard. For ages, I thought that was his name. So I don't know who that is, because he stopped playing, but he was like level 170 odd when I started playing, and like the first, being able to take that first area off him was absolutely epic, and
that's awesome.
And then I kind of remember being sort of 2 tiers ahead of the other local players.
Okay.
There was a couple of them. One of them still going strong. Ovalin still going strong, and they joined a local Scottish kingdom, which has the best name in Orna, by the way. Dalriada. It's actually the name of an old ancient Scottish kingdom in itself.
That's
based on
cool.
the west coast. Yeah, actually, if I ever make, they've got this old site, old Scottish fort, on the west coast, and it's like built on this. This is the actual kingdom of Dalriada. And it's actually, what's funny, I used to play cricket there in a field right next to it.
Yeah.
So it's all this kind of old Scottish stuff. So that's the best kingdom name in Orna. Frost Trolls maybe comes a distant second. By the way, Frost Trolls being not in Frozengard, that really, I had to look twice about that. What's all that about?
It's pretty jarring for people. They don't get it. That's part of it. It's hilarious. But you actually touched on it before. You were talking about the early game fear of enemies. Frost Trolls kicked my ass, man. Frost Trolls.
Big time.
And you saw a berserk Frost Troll. And I think I actually have screenshots, and I'll try and dig them up at some point, of like 4 berserk Frost Trolls at my house, and just being like, I should quit this game. I'm never going to kill them. I don't know what to do. And the funny thing is, we were fire, but I mustn't have known that they were weak to it or something. I don't know what it was.
Never tried it.
Yeah, the Frost Trolls used to kick my ass. So that was our thing. We were actually, originally the boys and myself were in the very first kingdom we joined, was called the Rusty Swords, which was run by a guy called Vulcan Raven.
OG, third player at 250. Sadly, no longer with us. He deleted his character.
No, he deleted the account. So there's an Aussie in their kingdom, and that the reason that I was in that kingdom is because I came from another GPS game just prior called something like Real Estate Tycoon, where you actually just walked around and bought local businesses or something like that.
I've never played.
I think that's what it was, something like that. And he told me about the kingdom he was in, and I was like, I'll just join that. But we were too serious and involved in the game for the Rusty Swords in the very early days. This was when they only had Dracon and Foamor. They didn't have any other raids in that kingdom. We were like, we need more. Like, we are leveling too fast and whatever. So it was all amicable and everything. We were just like, we might go and do our own thing and see how we go. So we started Frost Trolls, like only 2 weeks after playing, I think it was, after starting to play. So it's been around since July as well, and has 450 wins or something like that. So it's
Oof.
gone okay as a kingdom. But the thing that I'm proudest about with our kingdom is that we've just got a really good culture, I think, really good community. Like, we've never had drama, which might be a lot to do with that Australian laid back influence early on. I'm not sure, but yeah, it's been a wild ride. But Frost Trolls, no one ever gets it. It's because they used to kick our ass, so we were like, we'll name it after that. And it was extra funny because we weren't Frost, and we just thought it would maybe mess with people a little bit. So that's where it came from. And now it just feels like a bit of an identity. It
Oh,
can't
definitely.
go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you realize that frost trolls were weak to fire?
Oh, mate, probably about 3 tiers after I had issues with them anymore. I don't know. It's funny thinking about it now because I've gone through and played it recently from scratch, and I was like, these actually aren't hard at all. I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, I'm in the same exact same. I remember getting absolutely destroyed by them, just like getting one shot and like, who the fuck is this? And then once you go back, you play with experience, you know what kind of gear to look for, and especially when I played my first alt the first time, you know, I was playing it way more than my main account, so I was using the charge spells. I think I went melee the second time round for the first time, and so I went Dragoon for Dragon's Vengeance, and then realizing I remember like the first Frost Troll popping up in tier 6 and just like Dragon's Vengeance, boom, dead. And I'm like, these guys used to fucking destroy me. And
that's what I thought.
Yeah.
They used to wreck me, man. I was scared of the things. I was actually terrified of them. That's funny. Yeah, same sort of experience. And you actually spoke about going through and swapping to mage. It's really funny because that was something that I did as well on the original playthrough, but I didn't do it until I think it was around tier 7 because at that time people were starting to work out Necro and Necromancer at that point in time. Even now, tier 8, Necro is a very good class, but back then it was objectively the best class.
Yeah.
It was just insanely good. And then a little bit later, Apollyon came out, and with Necromancer, you could nearly solo Apollyon straight away. I remember me and a guy, Chris, in the Kingdom were halving them immediately as Necromancers.
Yeah.
There used to be this dude on the Discord called Ornate Pickle. I don't know if he's around anymore, but he used to do massive rants about Necromancer. I swapped to Mage as well on my first one after playing, I think it was Warrior most of the way, and then swapped to Mage. So that's funny.
Yeah. I don't think I definitely wasn't as fast as you going through.
Yeah.
More slow and steady. And then I played Mage until mid tier 9, and then at that point is around that point where the kingdom I was in, called the Natural Order, they were just, I just felt I was a bit more active than most of the guys there. So similar to you, I had my eyes on the Earthen Empire. They just seemed like some absolute legends, you know. Azuki was still playing at the time. I remember Vice going up against Click 2 for the global number 1 spot. So, you know, there were some like absolute massive names. Top of the leaderboard, half of them were all Earthen Empire. So I was kind of pretty anxious, nervous applying to go to this big kingdom, but it was super cool. Everybody was really sound, really accommodating, and and I remember going into my first raid and just seeing the damage numbers of the other players in the background, and they were doing like maybe 20k damage, so like maybe I think, you know, probably Swordplay 3 ticking for 4k, and I'm sitting there doing, I don't know, like a few hundred damage, and I'm like, holy shit, these guys are gods. And again, that was
that stuff.
I think that was another huge motivating factor, knowing what's possible, wanting to get strong, and having that kind of visual, not to compare yourself against them, but knowing what's possible, makes you want to get it a little bit more.
So, oh yeah, man. Oh, I remember that. I remember I've got a screenshot that I shared in the main Discord, like late 2019, that was doing, I think it was 90,000. It might have been close to 100,000 damage in one turn, but the amount of setup that took, it's like one of Dan Plan's big things,
Oh, yeah.
like do your great meditation and then have all of the stat buffs right and the stat downs right, and then it might get that number. And I remember getting it and posting it, and people being like, "Whoa, that's crazy! How did you possibly do that?" Because it was a 3-turn move after great meditation. I don't remember what one it's called. It's a fire spell, and I haven't used it in that long. It's one that you have to charge up.
Inferno, huh?
Yeah, but yeah, seeing that stuff is exciting for me, just like you said, and trying to like strive towards it. It's a big part of the fun, and something that's really interesting that you just said as well about Earthen Empire. What's really interesting about the Orna community in general is that some of us will come into it and naturally have this fear of nearly like that elitism, right? Where we don't want to bother the veterans, or we don't want to, we want to make sure that we put out the right impression or perception of ourselves. You saying join your kingdom, I was nearly pretty scared because these are the top of the leaderboard guys, And then overall, overwhelmingly in this community, everyone's just normal people.
Yeah.
They're nice people, and if you ask for help, anyone will give it to you.
Absolutely.
It's a pretty special thing, this community.
Goes back to what you were saying about the non-competitive nature. For probably for 99.9999% of the game, it's not competitive, and super helpful people. The Discord as well. I've never really seen much drama there. Maybe one or two moments over the course of 2 years. I don't think that's anything to, in the grand scheme of things, that's basically nothing compared to the amount of helpfulness that far outweighs any kind of drama.
Yeah, it's pretty special. I've enjoyed it. I love being part of it, to be honest.
And I think, for me, I just feel like it's getting more and more. A few more players coming in. There's a few players leave and stuff, but in general, it's a fairly active main Discord, and
it is. Yep.
I think having some kind of decent analytics now with the videos, I'm seeing a lot of people, the people getting in touch on the videos and stuff. It's increasing, which is amazing. So I don't think it's slowing down.
No.
And for sure, having a welcoming community helps that, I'm sure. And
it's interesting. I think I was talking to Flixmo recently, and he'd mentioned, is it like having a resurgence? Because there's been the mainstays that have been there forever and a day, and sometimes we go quiet, sometimes we have patches where we're not as active, but there are more new guys coming in, and it's really exciting to just see that the game is active still. It's nearly 3 years on, and it's continuing to stay active. And I mean, if you wanted to go through all of the content that had ever been added to Orna since its inception, there's only, to me, the thought that the trajectory will continue that way for quite some time. But yeah, it's a great community. Love seeing the new guys coming in, and love seeing the way that people welcome them, to be honest.
Absolutely. And there's a few things on the roadmap. Maybe we didn't plan to talk about that today, but maybe in the next one we'll have a look at the roadmap, because there's a couple of things on there that I'm super excited about. A couple of things that have been on there for a while, but good things take time.
That's a good topic, actually, guys. As you're watching, if you have any questions or topics that you'd love us to chat about, make sure to chuck them in the in the chat. We'll probably visit that at the end of the topics today as well. So contribute, please.
Yeah, it's a podcast for the whole community, not just Modangy and the Frost Trolls and myself.
That's it. Well, that's actually probably a good segue. Did you want to jump into the patch notes?
The latest patch, pretty huge in terms of balance. I think it's in recent memory one of the biggest meta shifters that I've come across. I can remember off the top of my head anyway. Shall we go down from we're on the Reddit post. If you're on the Reddit post, shall we go down top to bottom?
Yeah.
Faction hex status effect balance. So I'm not sure how many times you Frost Trolls whip out the Hex of Frost.
Obviously we can't. We can only do the fire one.
Hex of Frost was the most overpowered thing in Kingdom Wars. I hated it. Didn't come across it that much, but firstly, no. I mean, for Kingdom War balance, there's you're not going to always come across kingdoms at the same power as you. Like, I think naturally, if you go on a winning streak, you're going to end up coming across a much bigger kingdom and then get kind of smashed. And where Hex of Frost or any other hex isn't going to make too much difference. But I think there was a lot of discussion going into this change where people were either wanting hexes completely removed in its most extreme point. So Odie's kind of gone for balancing. See how this plays out over the next kind of couple months or whatever. So So Frozen, and actually this doesn't, of course, just affect hexes in wars. It affects the actual statuses in the entire game, right?
Yeah. So that's probably that's a pretty large deal. The changes to it in PvE, not just in wars. We didn't run into it ourselves too much, so we've historically not been a super high ranking kingdom. Where you would encounter hexes a lot. We've been in the top 10 a couple of times before, but because we're relatively casual by nature, we're not as good at making sure our wars actually tick over as soon as the 24 hours happens, which affects our ranking quite a lot, which means that you actually don't encounter the top guys as much. We could probably talk about the topic of the matchmaking and how you can help yourself as a starting kingdom at some point, because I've got a lot of tips for people if they want help there. But yeah, we haven't encountered it. I think we encountered it once. I'm pretty sure it was 10 inches unbuffed tires guys who might have used it against us. And it was pretty broken only because of the 50% chance to stick. So it was just there and you couldn't move. So then in a war setting, you're stuffed. In PvE, it is a bit of a big deal. Not actually so much you being frozen, but the opposite side of things. So it dropping off quicker can actually change your feel and pacing quite a lot. And you'll hear me talk about Endless quite a lot, Shabbash. You know that I'm right into Endless. So it can impact there. But I think overall, this is the changes to Frozen is something that it sounds like people were screaming for. And it's probably in a much better place than it was.
Yeah. I don't know the exact numbers. Maybe Major can whip them out in the chat. But
yeah, Major would know them.
Yeah. So decrease the chance to miss a turn and increase the chance to heal a little bit. So it's kind of moving it more towards Paralyzed. But of course, Paralyzed doesn't have... Paralyzed didn't get changed, by the way, in this patch. And but of course, the biggest thing there is Frozen. Makes it so if you are frozen, your opponent cannot miss you. For the vast majority of skills, and missing. I mean, starting off Hex of Frost in a war, missing a turn, missing 2 turns. It can literally make you lose your fight. Depending on who your opponent is. I mean, I like the idea of hexes having to make you think about your matchup a little bit more. It's just the fact that I'm in an Earthen Kingdom and having Hex of Natura put rot on an enemy is maybe if I was Frozen Guard from the start I wouldn't have as such a strong feeling, but he also added what is it, the Hex of Peace or the Blessing of Peace now?
Blessing of Peace,
Yeah,
which
Blessing
is
of Peace.
interesting because it's in the notes a lot lower down, so you might
Right.
miss it. But yeah, that Blessing of Peace is a pretty big deal.
We've just used it for the first time, actually. We were in Obot.
Jot?
Obot last time.
Okay.
Actually, Jot we don't bother with hexes because they just kill us anyway. So.
Oh, okay, that's
there's a gentleman's agreement there. We don't bother with hexes. But yeah, Obot. I mean, to be honest, yeah, Obot, they're Fire Kingdom, so they use the Blight, Hex of Dragon. That's, you know, for Fire Kingdom, Earthen Kingdoms, Hex of Blight is probably your number one choice, which kind of says a lot about your own hexes. So yeah, we use Blessing of Peace. Works really nice.
4-day cooldown, right? So it's 3,000 in 4 days. Long. Yeah.
I do remember someone, can't remember the name, sorry, but you know, they were pretty adamant. Well, they had some pretty strong points on the fact that if you use your Blessing of Peace and then you come up against a stronger kingdom maybe 2 or 3 times in a row, then you're kind of screwed. But
yeah.
Anyway, I mean, we can talk about Kingdom War hex balance for quite a long time. I think if we just move on to the next statuses, which are Rot and Burning, getting a bit of love. Rot now available on the Gaia class, which is absolutely superb. Not just great heal. So some love there for the Earthen Legion.
Do you know how much the debuff is? Like what percentage it drops by?
So don't quote me, but I believe it was changed from 5% to 10%.
Yeah.
If someone can confirm in chat, I believe that's what the current figures are, and I'm guessing it's the same on Burning for the offensive debuff. Lowers your attack and magic by 10%.
Yeah.
Which, if you can somehow if you add that into actual stat downs, that actually becomes pretty potent.
Yeah, so I like this play with mucking around with the status effects to not just be dots, right? To actually make them more useful, because then you start to think about builds that rely on that in a way. And I had wondered whether there will be consideration given to specifically the Kirby jewels and maybe making them proc at a little bit of a higher rate, because I know that they do say in the flavor text there, greatly, I think is the word that's used, or a great chance to inflict. Because I really like this move toward changing status effects to be more than just a dot.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, opens up a bit more options on your builds. Can still be countered by one item, but I think for PvE, you know, there's certain you'll know this in Ennis. There's certain mobs there which are pretty scary, but if you can get them burning, lower the stat as well. Maybe you can fly through.
It's not just the stat then now as well, because recently there was that addition which I think we'd listed somewhere as how Second Chance was now turned on for PvE.
Yeah.
So
huge.
Second Chance being a apparent passive or ability that should have been on there, and we could see it in the codex for a whole heap of enemies. The notable ones are your Arisen gods, excluding Mammon, a couple of the fallen gods and immortals, all getting Second Chance.
Yeah.
The dot is actually an interesting utilization now. With Second Chance being turned on in PvE, you might consider putting a jewel that procs a dot for that hit, instead of just running pure heretics or pure assassin jewels.
Yeah.
Because you might want to kill them through the Second Chance.
Or using just burn, or using fire, or using some kind of fire spells or fire attacks. Bleed as well. I don't think there's. I mean, the biggest one that I've noticed is on the immortal mobs. The Second Chance proccing. Firstly, the Immortal Lord itself. It was already a monster in in endless scenarios with super dodgy. If you come across a berserk one, it can absolutely ruin your day very quickly with Warriors Pavane.
Yes. Yep. It's a crazy. I think that boss, or that monster / boss is probably one of arguably the worst to encounter in the game now. If you're somebody who is dedicated to running your boss gauntlets or your endless runs, just because it's super dodgy, and the only way to shut it off is freeze. So you actually need to go and buy that by changing factions if you aren't already the Frost guys, which I actually did at level 248 because Second Chance had been turned on and it was driving me mental. So I actually faction swapped to go and get freeze. Yeah, because if you see a Berserk, a Mortal Lord at this point in your game freeze, you can actually just count that as a finished gauntlet, nearly, because you're going to miss them that many times. And now they Second Chance, and they've got the hardest hitting melee attack in the entire game. So couple all those things together, it's just absolutely brutal. The fact that they can't be dotted in any way is a bit harsh. So I think that Odie's usually pretty good at gathering a bit of data and seeing over time what the trends are, and perhaps there's some visiting that happens to Mr. Immortal Lord, whether there's a way to shut down that dodging a little bit easier or dot him, or maybe the Second Chance needs to go on that specific monster. But yeah, Immortals in general are brutal, and then Immortal Lord is that next level again. It's rough.
Literally immortal, right?
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
Yeah.
Well, day one it was bad. Day one it was bad, but it got fixed.
That was hilarious. Yeah. I mean, I didn't experience it myself because it came out and I couldn't be bothered playing at that point. But in the Discord, there were people saying Second Chance 6, 7, 8 times in a row. Can't kill this guy.
Yeah.
He forgot to switch something.
So yeah, that was, I think, so for context for people here, and I think that this will get touched on later, I was pushing toward 250 through endlesses at that time, and I got genuinely bummed like a lot of people did. But naturally, as we do as a community, we tend to overreact a little bit on day one. And the reality is that it's irritating, but it's not actually as game breaking as you would think. Now that it's been tweaked back, this status stuff, I think if there was a way to look at statuses more, and this might open that door. It's just been the faction ones at this point in time, but maybe there's a way that we can look into statuses more and what enemies are affected by them, because you could turn on stun for Immortal Lord and suddenly it's not the end of the world facing him anymore. But overall, on that topic, on the status effect balance, I'm really loving it. I really like that trajectory. It makes it a little bit more interesting. And anything that we can add in that can give us extra things to play with to see if we can get a cool build working. Yeah. If you can get a Inquisitor build that burns people going, that has the temporary defense up and then reduces their attack as well, and they absolutely never hurt you, and they're always on fire, that could be awesome.
Zeroed out.
Yeah.
I mean, just finally on the immortal stuff. I mean, it actually made me think twice about my gauntlet build, because at the moment I'm basically running mainly just normal gauntlets, normal menu gauntlets through the day. My local dungeons, I'm doing normal ones during the day, hard mode at night. And the day after that patch came, I think I ripped 3 or 4 dungeons in a row, but just to the normal immortal mob. Yeah. And I'm thinking, right, hang on, I need to change something here because this isn't working. And again, it's added a little bit more of a challenge, a bit more something to think about. So it's making it a bit less brainless, which I'm a fan of. I've been using the same since, I've been on a roll with the same kind of swash gauntlet build for a while. Just you don't need to worry about anything. Just get your attack high enough and then just kill everything in one turn.
Yeah.
So having a bit of something to think about, it's for me it's good.
It is good. It's really important, I guess, for us to sometimes not think about like and you've been 250 for a little bit and you don't do this anyway because you play other characters, but not just thinking about from the standpoint of, well, I don't have that much challenge now. I'm 250, so I don't really have much challenge. If we can spice that up a little bit, that would be perfect for me. And then the poor guys that come through and watch videos from old people and they get to see endless getting run through where there was no Arisen monsters and there was no second chance and there was no Gradlins with 100 and something thousand HP or 200,000 HP as the
400,000.
Yeah, exactly. Like there was no Arisen Hydra, so they get to see all this, and then I can understand why you could come in and go like, well, that seems like I won't be able to achieve something now because it was so much easier back then, and all of this extra stuff just makes what is already a brutal grind more brutal. But the reality of it when you try it is actually not that bad. All it takes is building that rhythm again and getting used to what enemy can proc what. It's no different to anything else that's been in the game. So it's my initial gut jump was, oh, that sucks, man. Like that's rough. And after a few days of running with it, you pick it up and you're pretty fine. It's just those bloody Immortal Lords specifically. They're rough. If you don't have freeze, they're rough.
Yeah. So the game's now pay to win, basically, once you get to tier 9. You got to go and buy freeze,
yeah. You got to pay $1.
Yeah.
Pretty rough.
All right. I think the next kind of biggest, or at least, this is at tier 10 specifically, the next kind of major change kind of revolved mainly around Ward, Spike Shield nerf, and Arisen started Kuras nerf. Well, Spike Shield nerf specifically for non-Gilgamesh classes.
Yeah, kind of nerf, yeah.
Yeah, I think there was one person in particular who was quite public on the power of Spike Shield on non-Gilgamesh classes at tier 10. Not sure if Poohman's here at the moment, but if anybody's been on the Discord over the last kind of few months, Poohman's been spreading Cataphract turn 2 Spike Shield 3 one-shot screenshots all over the Discord. So
didn't even need Cataphract, didn't even need Ward to be active. Just Deity has so much Ward, you can just gunner Spike Shield, done.
So it took a lot of limelight, took a lot of spotlight away from Gilgamesh being like the number one kind of Ward class, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm not sure how much you've actually played of Gilgamesh, but I've not played it since the changes. But from what I've heard, Spike Shield 3, and I'm guessing all the other Spike Shields are actually doing a little bit more damage than previously, and that's inclusive of the Arisen Searcher's Kuras nerf. So, what do you think about Spike Shield being a one-class skill, which is currently an outlier in the whole game? I think there's been recent chat about perhaps. Okay, we weren't planning to talk about this, but there's been recent chat of having tier 11 classes having like a capstone skill. But what are your thoughts on Spike Shield specifically being basically Gilgamesh only at the moment?
If you just said the word capstone skill, and if Mage is still listening, he's probably just wet his pants in excitement because he's pretty keen on that topic. I actually am really okay with the way it's fixed. Right. I don't know that it's going to be the perfect solution going forward, and whether there needs to be a revisit to whether that is Gilgamesh's skill specifically, whether Spike Shield is the one that we go with. I like the way that it was handled, just because as soon as I got Spike Shield, as soon as I hit 240, I went straight to just trying it with Deity and even Beowulf, and it was ridiculous. If you have Mighty Mimic or the Mightiest Mimic, you just use Gunner turn 1 and everything dies on turn 2. This thing was as fast as Swash builds were, with extra survivability because Deity doesn't die. Whereas Realm Swash, if you don't kill them, you usually die. Or can die. So I'm perfectly okay with them not being able to use it in that way. I think that's not what its design was intended for. So I get changing it that way. I just wonder what the long-term solve to that is, because it is unique. And one of the greatest things about Orna is that you can buy classes and you can use skills on whatever the hell you want, right? Like you could buy whatever, use whatever spec, whatever skill, whatever class. So that's interesting. I don't know what the long-term solution to that is, though. I haven't played with Gilga specifically with Spike Shield post this change. I have a Godforged Arisen Certus Cuirass.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, it was really nice.
It was, yeah.
Now it's okay, I guess. So even with that, really, I had ridiculous ward, right?
Yeah.
I have a decent Arisen Shield, 180%, and the Certus Cuirass was at 89% itself, so it was massive. Spike Shield gameplay was never my favorite gameplay. When I tried it, even with 240 unlocked, because my original plan was I'm going to get Spike Shield, and I keep talking about Endless. Sorry, guys, I'm going to use 2 tomes, and I'm just going to Spike Shield my way through everything.
Yeah.
But it's slow, and you have to recover ward, and Gilgamesh, for some reason, has negative 5,000 dexterity, so you miss every turn.
Yes.
It's so, yeah. Was never particularly fond of that play style. I much prefer, chucking on my Arisen rings with Cataphract and just being able to sword play everything endlessly. So I'm unsure of the change in. I've heard that the increase has basically put it back to where it was. Ward's in an interesting place because we all got really upset about Arisen Certus. Well, not all of us, because I think a lot of people were really okay with it happening, and I'm also okay with it happening. I just also wanted to keep my shiny item, I'll admit that.
It's still shiny.
Because it's still shiny, that's right. It's still nicer than a lot of Certus Cuirasses out there. What we're not giving it enough acknowledgement to at the exact same time as this happening, or actually preceding this happening, is we just had a whole heap of new ward hats hit. Where Avalon Crown now can give you 50% ward if you get a 200% roll, or 49%, I think it is, at Demon Forge. So that's huge. You've got Fey Yeti Horns, which have ward built into them now. The Ashen Phoenix stuff is phenomenal.
It's amazing.
Right?
It's ridiculous now,
yeah, so that's probably like in at least the leg slot that is best in slot, and that'll replace your Abyssal Greaves comfortably. So even though there's been that dip from the Certus Cuirass, when you combo all of the new gear that's come in plus God Forging, we can probably achieve the same ward anyway, unless you were somehow rocking a Legacy Crown and I think a 200% shield and all that.
Yeah, I think at the top end, I know there's players at the top end who had ridiculous ward gear, legacy gear, whatever, and high ward Arisen Certus Cuirass. I don't think they'll ever get that close, but close enough. And I think the only kind of major qualm people had was him not nerfing the chest sooner, right? We've had this almost.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know what, 9 months maybe, something like that. 8 or 9 months.
Yeah. July. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, people have kind of had it on easy street. They've had a lot of ward. They've been able to do endless very easily. Not easily, of course, but they've had this buffer and they've got used to it.
Yeah.
And I know there's a couple of people in my kingdom who are a little bit pissed off with the nerf, but I think for most content in the game, I don't think it makes a huge difference. You don't need 150 ward for a lot for a lot of things. Maybe if you're in floor, I don't know, if you come across a couple of Zerk bosses, floor 200 or whatever, they're not going to do 150,000 damage in one turn. Majority of the time, it's going to take a couple of hits.
It's not actually, and just like the second chance stuff. Surprise, the guy who designs the game actually has somewhat of an idea of how impactful this stuff might truly be, and it's not as impactful as you'd think. It is interesting to see the trend with ward in general, like the fact that we had this Serta drop, but then the staff that came the very next month, or in the same month it might have been, was this Serta drop. Yeah, the Serta got cut during Kirby, and there was a staff that had 40% or 44% ward on it when you chuck gems in it.
Pretty
so
huge, yeah.
and for me as Heretic, when I was doing Endless as Heretic, my ward overall still went up.
Wow. Yeah.
Because I wasn't using a ward stuff. I didn't have a Fey Macca or a Arisen Fey Macca. So when I start using the Feral Arca staff instead, it gave me more ward overall, even with the drop. So yeah, I think that just having too much on one item is bad, which is probably what the point was, and then making sure that going forward, if there's going to be a cut to it, that it's not so long afterwards. That's where people get a little bit salty, but there's been some acknowledgement of that. And I know that Odie's spoken about the desire to try and work out a way to allow people to get their adornments back.
Yes.
With, again, acknowledged fears that can't make that free. So he's conscious of the impacts of leaving it so late.
Yeah, I'm fairly sure that that's going to come fairly soon. I think it definitely deserves some kind of cost associated to it, not just being able to remove adornments for free.
I agree.
It needs some kind of cost, even if it's just gold. Should be fine, because as you said, a lot of people pumped in their best Jewels of the End or Saturnize if they were raiding Surtur at the time. I know I used my best Saturnine jewels in my Surtur's chest. I didn't get a single. I didn't get upset for 1 second, because my chest is only a 170, so I didn't have that.
Right,
it wasn't that good in the first place. It was all right. But yeah, I think.
Wow, 170. Did you raid it much?
All month. I got the 170 on the last day as well.
Oh, that is brutal.
I think Surtur put a lot of people into kind of semi-retirement for a while. It was that's the danger having. I mean, let's be honest. At the time, it is literally the best chest slot at tier 10 for all content at that time period. Unless you're not wearing any clothes, I think that was the best in slot item. And I think now with the change, it's still really high ward. It's the best. It's the highest ward chest slot, but it's not like a mandatory item. Not that it was mandatory in the first place, but when it was so much ahead of other things, now it's just a really solid option if you've got it. And people I'm pretty sure it's going to come back around this year, so people can go and try and find a good one.
Well, it'll need to. There's two people have seen it. They've been exposed to it for too long. Even in its current state, it's still the best ward chess piece at least. But there's definitely considerations out there, like that Yeti coat is incredible, and the Ashen Phoenix chest for warriors with that HP is mental. So there's more. Oh, and they're like even the Fallen gear now from in the chest slot is really good.
The Arisen gear,
Arisen gear, sorry. Is really good. But that on Spike Shield specifically, I have to probably give it a crack with Gilga. It's not my favorite skill or style to play anyway, because even if it can do big chunky damage, you're actually reducing your own passive to do that. Then you have to start worrying about gaining that back, and Gilgamesh's passive isn't that high anyway. I think it's 1.5 rather than 2 times like the other classes. So it's definitely not my preferred style. So I think as a fix, it makes sense. As a long-term solution, I would probably think that it might be better relegating that to just some skill that it gets. That's fine. Spike Shield is just a skill it gets, just like Beowulf gets Verse and never uses it outside of this. I think there's one scenario that Verse is kind of good. Maybe there's a different capstone skill that could be implemented closer to that 245, 250. works better, and I don't know what that is.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, what about possibly my favorite change in the most recent patch then? Buffs to dual wielding, and then subsequent buffs to the sequencer spec, the tier 9 spec. Asked you beforehand. Well, let's first talk about what actually changed on dual wielding itself. Firstly, when dual wielding first came out, I think both dual wielding weapons, they literally got, I think, 45% of their stats. Then it went up to 55%, and then in the most recent change now, we now get 65% of the stats of each weapon.
We could probably find it, but I think it was actually closer to 35 or something early, wasn't
really?
it? It was real low. It was ridiculously low. 45 might be right, actually. But yeah, there was no reason to do it early on.
Shit when it came out, yeah.
You just put on arrows and you're fine, or a scroll. Yeah.
But now 65%, really solid. If you've got a better weapon, if you've got a decent weapon, it can often give you more of your main stat than equipping an offhand. But it kind of makes offhands more into, well, actually not just offhands, but other weapons. It brings more into a utility play. Like, for example, I'm now using a random tier 10 Crystallis for all my dungeon runs. So now I can just use in the offhand slot. So now I can use Golem's Fortitude, Bear's Might without the stat downs, and the damage is still good enough. So that's pretty nice.
Yeah, that's a really interesting thought. I've been running 2 staffs, which I think a heap of people have, because a certain somebody made a YouTube video showing how powerful it can be in Arena.
It's pretty good.
It's pretty good. Yeah, I really like this change. I think not just because it's strong and it's hilarious seeing a double cast where you have 6 numbers pop up on your screen.
Oh yeah,
straight away, especially if you're using Chimera at the same time and it does something and there's just numbers everywhere. It's hilarious. But I like how it changes my approach. Like, I can't just simply raid Morrigan with 2 staffs and insta win, right? Like, that means that I'm having to miss out on, in a lot of the builds that I use, dragon resistance, because I would always use the Mighty Griffin shield. I'm missing out on a whole bunch of ward. But I could do damage maybe quicker if I build it right. The other thing that it's not a guaranteed just silver bullet win. This will be the best way to go, because if you go sequencer, you lose magi, so your skills cost more. But yeah, dual wielding in general, and I think in the early game, I think Dave the Grey was talking about how useful it is for melee. I haven't played around with it because I don't have good melee weapons. I have a crow song,
right?
A Risen crow song, but it's 172, so it's much lower than a lot of other people's weapons. But I don't have a second good melee weapon, so I haven't given it a crack on melee yet. But for the staves, I love the way that it's changing my approach to the game in general.
I mean, I had there's one local guy who has been heretic, been playing mage all the way through, and as I think he's mainly playing magi, and kind of he liked the game, but magi didn't necessarily have the firepower, right? Especially if he didn't have an amazing staff, right? But now he's switched to sequencer, and he's absolutely back in love with the game. Just on the fact that he can doing more damage is actually super fun, and
good.
It's in the arena, like Magi was super slow. Now with sequencer, it's that opportunity cost again. Higher risk, higher reward. Less defense, less ward, but you're gonna try and one shot or 2 shot your enemies. Increase, just going through the roof, and seeing the double hit. If you get like a double hit crit, quick cast on something like Ultima.
Super on a deity, and it's a blue number.
Yeah,
that's good fun. You pointed out something, I think, Shabbash, in a post that you made pretty recently around potential proposed changes to Swashbuckler, and not to go through that specific change right now because it's not in these notes, and from what I can tell. I'm not sure if Odie's shut down the idea of dropping that or not. But the point that I wanted to bring up more is about how you mentioned that it's fun.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that should really be weighted, I think, more heavily than, you know, whether something is broken OP or that sort of stuff. This game's got to be engaging first and foremost. You could carry on that sequencer is a OP or the new meta because a lot of people are doing it. What I think is absolutely awesome is a piece of content has been released and people want to play it.
Yeah.
You know, it means it's fun. So that's a really good thing. And I can imagine in a couple of weeks, people will probably drop back to doing what they're doing or whatever. But it's really exciting to hear that people jump in, they see a new thing and they want to try it and play around and have fun with it.
I mean, that's the big thing. When dual wielding first came out, people wanted to try it because it's new. Found out it was not so good. It's been iterated on by Odie, and, you know, fair play. Now I think it's in a really good spot, and it's just another really, really viable option. For mages at tier 9 as well, I've had a few people questioning, should I go sequencer now? And there's actually some pretty decent staffs available at tier 9. And I think people do that. You know, if I had sequencer available to me when I was first going through the game as Omnimancer and I saw it was doing more damage, I think my playstyle is I prefer offense compared to defense. So that was something that would be something that I would go for.
Yeah, well, if you have low raid caps and you're in tier 9 and you want to get that Apollyon damage in quickly because other people are hitting it. Most people naturally were already doing the scroll rather than warding up. So they were using a scroll and a staff and magi or whatever. Now you've finally got a use for that Demeter staff that you thought was garbage, because you can run a Demeters and an Ithras and you can do a lot of damage. What is interesting is the mechanics on the adornments and how they operate, because I think we collectively assumed at the very start that all adornments would actually proc the same. But Odie had made a little mention that the secondary hand doesn't proc as much. So I don't know how that math works out. He'd hinted at swap your weapons if you want those procs. So they can still proc. So if you've got, you know, full heretics on your offhand and full mammons on your main, then the heretics can still proc, but it seems a lot less than they would if it was the other way around. So there's that skill within both sequencer and duelist, swap weapon. Apparently we're meant to be using it. So yeah, there's probably some stuff coming in that space, I think.
Waiting for weapon switching to become relevant. I mean, for me doing the weapon switch, it's a turn. I know the weapon switch skills, they do actually do damage, but you do miss a turn to do it. And for me, I would almost always just do damage that turn. But I think one weapon you mentioned, right, the Demeter's staff. Actually, I was thinking about this a couple of days ago. With the huge amount of mana on it, it actually becomes a really, really nice option for sequencer because, as you said, you don't the mana cost of skills is nowhere near as low as it is with Magi. So Demeter's staff increasing your mana, that's a really good idea, in my opinion. No, I've not tried it yet, but that's something to look to.
Yeah, so there's the point of it all is that there's just more to play around with, which is ultimately a fantastic thing. Anything that Odie can implement that's down this path, I'm all for. So I'm really enjoying it myself. I'm playing around with it because it's something new. So I'll probably keep doing that until, you know, I watch a Swash video and get really excited to start playing Swash again.
Speaking of,
because your video did that to me today. Actually, I was like, oh, now I need to take my clothes off again and start playing Swash.
Take them off, Dangy. Whip them off. I think actually the initial metrics on that video are way better than average. So I think a lot of people were waiting for it. So yeah, I think Swash again for me, one of the most fun things in the game. Super fun.
Yeah. Well, that was the point that I was trying to draw out of the post you made, is the fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of fun and Swash, is there anything more on this patch you want to talk about before we move on to?
I don't think so. Obviously, there's the realm shifter sprites in there, which everyone will be happy about, and we touched on the blessing of peace. Really good addition for all of the complaining around Frost specifically, but overall, amazing balance changes. I'm pretty excited by them.
Yeah, I love
it. Happy to move on.
All right. So I think we had this idea. Hopefully this podcast will be at least once or twice a month, right? And that kind of goes well with event raids, which are obviously lasting 1 month. And we also had the idea of picking an item to make a build around at the start of the month. We haven't really prepared. I don't know if you've got an item in mind.
I don't. I can actually I have an item that I want to make a build around, which I'll try and bring up on my phone what it's called on Orna now, and I can be prepared with a build in our next podcast to go through how I went with it. Do you have one ready to go? Do you already?
Well, I didn't necessarily, but I'm in the process of leveling up a couple of staffs for my Gilgamesh sequencer build.
Mm-hmm.
So nothing to do with Naggeneen. But Naggeneen has one of my favorite items in the game, smelly shoes. These.
Yeah.
This is like a swatch. These are like the best pair of shoes for Swatch. I mean, one of the best. A really, really solid option. Actually, when these raids were introduced now this month, I'm pretty sure the boots only dropped from the non-Arisen version. But they're now definitely dropping from both, which is really nice. So smelly shoes. Let's have a look here. It gives you immunity to poison and blight, right? Blight is one of my. It's one of those hexes where one of those statuses where it doesn't seem too bad, and but when you're actually in like a really critical moment, all of a sudden you miss like 3 turns in a row.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It feels like it's an 80% stun lock sometimes.
Yeah. When it's not. It's like 12.5% or something. Or
it's
25%.
Low, yeah.
I don't know, it's low anyway.
Yeah, it's low.
Anyway, yeah. Naggeneen, it feels like a thief-based event raid. I think Odie made the point recently that he was trying to make event raids kind of cater to a specific kind of class style, right? And with Kerberos last month, that was very much pet class focused.
Beowulf, pets, yeah.
Not just tier 10 stuff available.
Yeah.
So yeah, smelly shoes, tier 8 item, prevention of poison and blight. One of like the holy grail items for Swash, honestly. If you can get a set of these with elemental on them, absolutely, the absolute dream. I've got I think they have 5 slots, adornment slots when you master forge them. So
does it really? It's got 5.
I think so, yeah. So stick them with Jewels of the Deep or Crimson Pinions. Very nice. Yeah, well now, so Swash in general just got a whole lot more exciting because of the recent changes around offhands. Typically, you couldn't actually Crimson Pinion your entire build because you needed at least some mana. Yeah.
Now with Volley, you can actually get away with 0 mana potentially, or enough mana to cast Bears or Gunner probably, and let your Mimic cast something else, and then volley everything to death. So loading everything up with Crimson Pinions could be exciting.
Yeah, I need to load up on Crimson Pinions first. I need to wait for these adornment removal patch to come in so I can get some back.
Yeah, that's fair. Well, or lean on T8 alt.
Yeah, well, I've done that already. It's just it is a bit slow.
Yeah,
it is slow.
So it's a lot of work.
Yeah, I mean, some of this other gear available from Nag. A couple of new items. There's the Fairy's Tanto, which is an offhand. You get a little bit of attack, a little bit of dexterity, You do lose ward, but it's also 2% crit, and gives you a chance to cause poison. For me, this looks like a kind of like upgraded Whisper. There are other options available, but if you get lucky, get a decent quality one. Could be okay to use, in the back end of tier 7. So, as a good starter SWAT, if you're just starting Swash, for example, around now, pretty decent item to get mid game.
Yep.
Also,
Fairy Ring.
Yeah. Oh, I got an ornate one this morning.
Oh, nice! Congratulations.
400 mana.
See, we didn't grow up in the days of. I'm pretty sure Mirror didn't come in until well after I needed it. We had to use fairy rings for ages.
Oh wow.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Or we just didn't. No, that makes sense because I smashed Arena early and I never got a mirror.
Yeah.
But we used fairy rings for mana for a bit, because as melee you don't have mana.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm.
And there's also, I think the Arisen fairy and the fairy, there's not that much difference between them. The non-Arisen one has more dex for some reason, but yeah, the mana difference isn't the same. It's a pretty good point. You can actually save the mirror slot and actually put the fairy Tinto in there or a Whisper in there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually a pretty good shout. Another new item is the Vandal's Veil, which is makes one less likely to be afflicted by status effects. So it's like again one of these Ashen Phoenix type items. It's like a fake Steadfast.
Yep. Steadfast Light. Yep.
Yeah. So like again, it's actually available for all classes, but especially the Thief line after. Well, Arcanix especially doesn't have Steadfast, but Magistrate does, Nick does. So another...
I get confused by that. They're changing around, and doesn't Nyx also have Life Siphon? It's like confusing, yeah.
Pretty decent balanced stats. So I think there's pretty decent items here for kind of mid-game tier 7, 8, 9. Also, Naggeneen's hat. I also got an ornate one of these without bothering to try, but I think it's the only item in the game which protects you from toxic, right? Which is pretty interesting. The stats aren't that usable.
Briny does, doesn't it?
And Briny Pendant, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Only the most used accessory.
Yeah. Besides the most used accessory, though, this one, yeah. But that's a big deal for specifically the scenario that you're talking about. If we're talking about, mid-tier, low-tier thieves building swash builds, they might want to opt for that protection not in an accessory slot.
Yep. And pretty good for its own raid, actually.
Yeah, true. Actually, originally when I was raiding Nag, when it first came in, I think I was using Nag hats to survive.
Alright. Good shot.
Yeah.
Good shot. So, I think apart from that, there's a new adornment. What was it called? Spore, I think. This little mushroom. Adding it, it's a weapon adornment, gives you the chance to put Poison, Blight, and Sleep on your enemy, which sounds super nice. Have you got any of these? Are you planning to use any of this in your builds? I've heard that the prop rate isn't that high, but
yeah, I wonder whether that topic will come up sometime soon, because if we're adding in adornments that have proc rates, you need the proc rates to be reasonable.
Yeah.
And I'd heard the same, so I'm not about to go and chuck a heap in something if the proc rate is low. Typically, the only things that I'd ever consider putting anything like this in would be PvP specific weapons, because sometimes those dots can be monstrous if you've got a second chance enemy. A sleep is huge for shutting down Mystic Feather. So yeah, I would, but haven't yet. That's not been the main thing that I'm chasing from this raid boss. I haven't done her a lot, to be honest, because I
Mhm.
just grinded to 250. So I was taking a couple of rest days and planning to get into her soon. But X pots for me.
Exports.
Yeah, so X elixirs, X health potions, and X mana potions. So X potions, X pots. I think she's like a really good source of those if you're going to smash them. I can never say this word right. Panacea.
Panacea.
Yeah. Again, we just had Kerberos that had dropped that as well, which is brilliant. Now we've got another raid, so take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Dropping gauntlet keys and dowsing rods is always huge
Always
for
nice.
people in tier 7 rating this, and tier 8,
Well,
tier 9.
even lower tiers can get those items as well, as long as you do more than 0 damage.
Yep, that's it. So they're good, but for me, the big item is actually smelly mushrooms, because
Shrooms.
that's a spec, man. That's an entire spec in one consumable.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's amazing. It's so good. What are you gonna?
That's
What's your main use
insane.
case on them? Endless.
My main use? Nah, not for endless.
Big hits.
Because endless you don't need to, right? Because endless you just spec swap, and eventually when you are hitting endless at that level, you won't care too much about the Orns, because if you spec swap to Raider, which is what we're talking about there, is Berserk 3. If you spec swap to Radar, typically your plan is to get deep enough to make more than 200,000 Orns anyway, so it's not a big deal. Smelly mushrooms for me are going to be a massive deal for running specifically things like Gilgamesh Cataphract for raiding, because Cataphract's slow. And I don't know if you still do, but I still have 6 Arisen Morrigans at my house that I'm just terrified to raid, because the world raid boss is worse than the actual kingdom one was. And for me, if I do well, it's 3 passes at minimum. It might take 4, but if I could have double stats up on my Cataphract, that's actually a massive deal for me. And I'm envisaging that there's going to be other raids that will be as tough as that at some point. I think that this is a full spec shroom is going to be an item that people will want to try and take advantage of. If it's here, try and stock up. But they don't drop, man. Like they're not dropping most raids.
I mean, I think it's fairly rare. I don't know what your damage limits are like in the Frostrals, but you know, I've had a few.
We don't believe in limits.
Right. Okay. This guy's unlimited. Well, that's it. I mean, in that case, if you're doing more than 50% damage and they're not dropping, that means it's like a rare drop, like an unguaranteed drop, right? Yeah. Yep. So I think I'm barely just tagging her because kind of a little bit of burnout from Kerberos, but got a few smellies, got a few shrooms myself. I think for me the biggest use case is going to be trying to one shot Morrigan, or just doing like a massive hit, because as he said, it's yeah. I mean, you should be able to. You should try that with your own Arisen Morrigans, by the way. Now that you've got
try
Ultima,
and do big damage.
Well, yeah, I mean not Ultima, but like the Fey Inferno.
Yeah,
I think it's called for
fire. Yeah, so what's going to happen is I've got 6 of them, and at least 2 of them are going to drop Arisen Fey Macapillas, and then I'll start trying that. My starves at the moment. Actually, I do have a 199 Ithras, so that's good. Arisen Ithras, I should say. Staff. That's a good staff. But otherwise, my best staff is actually an instrument. That's the 172 Crow Song. So, I can't pull off those hits just yet.
Yeah.
And I'd probably save them for when because right now I'll be in a holding pattern of trying to maximize opportunity, I guess. And those shrooms to me seem like an opportunity maximizer. They're something that you could play around with, but then you're going to kick yourself, because I did this exact thing. And by the way, everyone who's in tier 7, tier 8, tier 9, even below tier 7 right now, start hitting Nag for just regular berserk mushrooms, because once you're past, say, about tier 8, you won't get them from arena anymore, and you will kick yourself for not stockpiling them, because I've been sitting on below 40 for, oh God, it'd be a year, you know?
Jesus.
So I'm trying to apply that same thinking to these smelly mushrooms. I think that they're ones that, you know, I have already played around with them a couple of times, and it's good fun when you've got Gunner going and you've got all of this other stuff going at the same time. But I'm going to try and stockpile them, because there's going to be some raid come at some point that I'll want to get through. And it might be these Arisen Morrigans for all I know, because they're a pain in the ass.
They're brutal. Oh, nice. Stocking up in shrooms. All of the shrooms, yeah. Awesome.
All of the shrooms, even just regular berserk ones. But yeah, it's an interesting raid. I think that this one's a good one for what I get appreciative of is not having it all targeted at higher levels. I think this is really good content for those mid levels. As a tier 7 raid, this is fantastic. This is an amazing raid.
100%. And even the weapon actually is pretty nice. The Clerican Soul Blade, the Clerican arrows as well.
Arrows are really good.
Yeah.
Really good. I think they are, because they don't have negative ward on them from what I remember. So your comparison is Blight and Arcane arrows, which both have a base of 24 attack. The Clerican arrows have magic on them also, I think, which might be useful, but it probably isn't. But it doesn't have negative ward as well, I think, was the differentiator. So it can be somewhat useful.
Super nice.
Yeah.
Biggest takeaway though, mushrooms, right?
For me, I think that stockpile shrooms.
Yeah.
Stockpile shrooms.
I think for myself, once we're kind of regaining Orns a bit in EE after Kerr, but yeah, we're probably gonna increase the push rate on Nag. We got a lot of swashes and broken smelly shoes or poor smelly shoes with an element. You know, that's the target for myself this month.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
That sound really cool. I'm actually really keen to see if you get some and what the build looks like afterwards.
The build will be the same, just with an element on it.
Yeah. Have you got elements on your other slots?
I've got one shoe. I've got Alden's hats with a few elements. I've got one pair of smellies from last year with earth on it, which for me isn't the best element to have, but
no,
it's not broken though, so it's not good enough. But again, it ties in exactly with what we were saying earlier with the amount of progression in terms of gear. It's almost never ending. There's always something more to chase, right? Which is keeps you playing,
which is awesome. It's like the worst and the best part about the game is the frustration that comes from not getting what you want.
Yeah.
But if you got everything that you wanted, and I have actually seen it for a couple of people where they get gear too easily, like they'll get, as soon as they jump to tier 10, they'll start getting Fae, bad bees immediately. They just drop off because it's not engaging when you get things immediately. You'll see every couple of days, I reckon, in the main Discord, people complaining about, no, I actually have the worst luck in games. You don't understand how bad my RNG is, but inevitably those players actually stick around because you will get something with enough effort. That's what it boils down to. You will eventually get something, and even if you don't, you can actually still beat all the content in the game without the best item anyway.
Yeah, very true. You don't need 200% ornate or 70% broken smellies to beat the game, right? Yeah.
That's right. But that's a cool item. It's a very cool item to call out.
Yeah. I love it.
Old small issues.
I don't know if he had it Swash in mind when he initially made it, but it's now like one of the Swash Holy Grail items anyway.
It's the staple, yeah.
All right, let's move on then to the next topic, which we've kind of touched on a little bit. Dan, you came up with the name of this podcast, the Arisen Podcast. It sounds very Orna elitist. That's definitely not what we're going for for people. It's just kind of a decent name because there's a lot of Arisen kind of not lore, but there's a lot of Arisen stuff in the game, right? And in terms of
That's right.
yeah, in terms of character progression, however, when you reach the max level, currently 250, you get a little customizable title called Arisen. And Dangy, you recently got it. I think you're one of the most recent people to get it. Why don't you tell us? You've told us your initial push to what, tier 10-ish, but it's taken you a lot longer to get to 250, right?
Yeah, for sure. So the name actually came from in the main Discord. I teased potentially doing a podcast a while ago, and Neff came up with the name Arisen Podcast. All the other ones were jokey, but Arisen made a lot of sense because of the things that you touched on before. There's so many Arisen enemies. There's always themes with the raids each month. There's something Arisen in there. So yeah, it seemed to make sense and not intended to be elitist in any way, but that is attached to 250. I did start pushing it recently, had a couple of friends, and I can never pronounce Core's name, Corionesis, I think it is, and Major, who had started a spreadsheet, and they kindly showed me their spreadsheet of tracking XP. So I was like, oh, is that all right if I jump in with them? And basically what we'd all sort of spoken about early on in the piece is, oh, let's just see how much XP we can get a day. And the way it had been built, Major had built it with some formulas in there that told you what your average XP was.
Yeah.
So it looks at how many days you've done and divides it. And then we start talking, get a little bit more serious. You're like, oh, well, we're in the mid 200s now, and Major at the time I think was 240. I was 238, and I did take my time. I had no goal of reaching 250. To me, 250 has been unobtainable, and I think to the point that it would take enjoyment out of the game if I told myself that was a reasonable goal. It was never a reasonable goal. So instead, my goals were based around completely different things. Gear. When God Forging came in, it was based around getting a God Forged item. It might be, getting gear specifically, doing a raid repeatedly until I got an item, but never getting 250. I thought it was ridiculous, the XP curve, and I'm not going to go for it just for my own sanity, Yeah. But then when we started doing this thing and we're tracking our XP, and we were talking about doing endless gauntlets. And credit to the guys, like I'm probably in a bit of a different position to both of them in that I'm a bit older and have some more available adult money. So I bought shrines, but these guys weren't buying shrines, and they were starting to do 20 billion XP every single day.
Without shrines.
I'm like, holy shit, without shrines.
Jesus.
I was like, holy shit. That is insane, doing 20 billion XP. For me, I think, what is it, in 220, to get to 225 is 141 billion XP total, I think. And then the XP ramp from there, because to get to 245 to 246 is like 142 billion itself.
Yeah.
And these guys are doing 20 billion in a day, and I'm like, far out, this is obscene. But they were using Endless, and I'm like, this is fantastic, because I actually have played and done Endless for ages. So I think I touched on it earlier. Australia has had some lockdowns happen around March 2020 for COVID. I'm in Victoria. The state that I'm in had very harsh lockdowns, so we weren't allowed to leave our houses. It's outside for an hour of exercise a day unless you needed to work or you needed to get grocery shopping. Otherwise, we had to stay at home. So I was at home all the time. So I was doing Endless, because just doing your gauntlets on time it's actually quite boring. There's not a lot of content there, but doing Endless, you sit on your phone for, it might be a couple of hours if you do them back to back. And I was doing them what will be the most head-slapping face palm of a way to most people. I was running Gilgamesh. I didn't run Tomes. I didn't run Venom. So had no XP gear. I only ever had one band of gods, and I would just go through really, really slowly with Spike Shield 2. So it would take me an hour and a half to do, and endless. And I was pretty well versed at it, but it was slow. And then I'm playing with these guys; they're hitting 20 billion a day in no time. I'm like, holy shit! So I started changing up the play style. Initially, it was going Realm Shifter.
Charmer,
to
yeah.
try and get them done quick. Yeah, Realm Shifter Charmer, so you can Warriors Purveying everything to death, but you can wear 2 Arisen Tomes and Venom and still kill everything. But then both Major and I were using Realm Shifter Charmer and not getting super deep.
Yep.
Like probably get to like floor. You could die on floor 80 hits Realm Shifter Charmer, to be honest, but you can sometimes get with relative consistency to about 130, 150 with decent gear. And bear in mind, I had a Serta chest that was Godforged with 89% ward on it, so I had good ward. But our friend Core Oreo was getting to the 200s as Heretic. So we eventually, after getting frustrated collectively between the two of us, Major and I eventually made the jump as well. And I went a bit mental. I'm not sure if people have seen it who are in the chat right now, but my journey was 238 to 250 in 36 days, an average of 42 billion XP every single day. I had 3 days of over 100 billion XP. One of them was 150 billion XP. And on the final day, which I was absolutely gutted about, but I got 136 billion when I needed 141 billion on the final day. Oh. So I started the next day we only needing 5 billion to get to 250, but it's an insane way to play. So that's just doing endless gauntlets for hours, right? And this had a few impacts, I think. So I think it's like a really interesting topic to talk about because there's 2 really key things about it. One is 250 is not actually unobtainable. So that's like probably one of my major takeaways is I was seeing this XP bar move every single session. Every single time I played, I was seeing it move. The same thing that I talked about right at the start of the podcast was that the thing that I get the most engagement out of with this game is playing with people and having shared experiences with people. So for me, the fact that the 3 of us were talking about it every single day, and showing our XP gains and also being able to vent when we ran into an Immortal Lord that we missed 6 times in a row, or Dark Pegasus that for some reason you can't kill Dark Pegasus. That made it so much more enjoyable, and suddenly 250 became obtainable and it became exciting. And then I'm like, I can't stop now. I wanted to set my aim at 20 billion a day, but now I'm like, 40 billion's got to be the aim, right? And then it was like I was doing 60 billion every single day, and it was no longer unobtainable. So endless is a real option. You just have to learn it. Endless is really interesting because I'll harp on about this until the cows come home, is that I think it's all about rhythm. I think that endless can be learned by anyone, and all it takes is dedicating the time and not at your first failure, your first stumble, because I've died on floor 1, floor 7, floor 10. I've done it that many times. I've not got to 100 and it feels frustrating, but you can learn it by just repeatedly exposing yourself to it, learning the mobs. You've got the codex button now that helps so helpful, much. Right?
Yeah.
Oh god, it's a game changer. So you can use that to actually level and get orns and get your classes without moving around a heap, which is great. But this is the other point. So I said, like, it makes 250 obtainable. The thing that's maybe the massive con of playing that way is that if you don't keep it in check well, and for me, I was really lucky that I had 2 other guys who were going through the same thing as me at the same time. I have a wife who's really understanding of getting serious into video gaming for short periods. I actually think doing that every single day is not particularly healthy. I think I was getting fatigued mentally. My hands were actually getting sore from holding them in the same position and moving my thumbs and whatever, because I've got quite a large phone where my thumb can't really reach that well. So I actually think that it's cool, it's fun. Endless is the challenge that exists in the game at this point in time, outside of maybe, your Arisen Morrigans and your Ashen Phoenixes. There's not a heap that's super difficult. Endless is. You can learn it, but you're going to come across something that will be able to kill you eventually. So I think it's really, really cool, but also just needs to be run without expectation of. I think once you start to put that expectation of, I need to hit this floor, or I need to hit this amount of XP, or it's a failed run, you actually are never going to enjoy it. It's something that I'd advise you to get away from doing. If you're stressed, don't do it. But yeah, it was super cool, man. And now I'm actually 250. It's something that I never thought I would be able to do, because just like you talked about early about joining Earth and Empire and seeing these names of all these guys who were top of the leaderboards and whatever, I never thought that was a thing for me. Like, I don't think it was possible. But yeah, I'm 250 now, and it's pretty cool. I can relax. It's a cool thing. I can take off tomes. I can use whatever accessories I want, and I can play around with cool things in the game. But yeah, it was an exciting, fun journey. That I was really lucky and fortunate to have a couple of people going through the same thing at the same time. Major hit 250 before me. He started at a little bit of a higher level, but that dude just was a machine, consistent, did it every day, and got to 250. A Kingdom mate, Rooster Man, number I think 15 or 16 on the leaderboards, great guy from Australia, hit 250 about a week before me. And then I hit it. So it's cool seeing all these new names popping up there now, because it's been yourself and a few others for such a long time. It's cool to see a few new faces.
There's a few people now. I think I saw the numbers around 60 or 70 odd 250s, which is pretty great. It shows a lot of people are still enjoying the game, putting a lot of effort in, because you do need to put effort in, as you said, but it feels great to get there. If you look back to a game that I played a lot, like Diablo 2, I mean, I never got to level 99. The grind on that was crazy. I think max character I got to level 92 or something. But with Orna, I don't know. With it being like a mobile game, you don't need to sit down. It requires zero setup to play. Like you can just sit on the couch. You can watch Netflix and Endless, as someone said in chat. It's something you can do.
That's a good one, Netflix and Endless. That's exactly what I did. Just sat there and watched shows.
Yeah. Well, I think
awesome.
So what did you say? You went from level 238 to 250 in what, 36 days or something? Just over a month?
36 days, yeah.
Yeah, that is...
So I could actually pull up what that equates to in XP, because that makes it make a whole lot more sense as to how insane that is. Because just saying that doesn't sound like very many levels or very much XP. So that equates to 1.5 trillion P.
Wow. So
I started on 880 billion. And ended on the 2.4 trillion that you need. So it's a lot.
So if you didn't switch to mage, what level would you be right now? 240?
I wonder that. And like, this is one of those hypothetical scenarios that you're never going to know the true answer to. I would wager that I would have gotten too frustrated to continue it at some point in time. I would have been probably past 240, but I don't think I would have hit 250. And the interesting thing for Melee in particular is that there's not really a reason to go past there, right? Like, and you could argue there's not really a reason to push past 230. Like, Gunner is good, but Spike Shield you could live without. Ultima is cool, man. Ultima is a cool skill.
It's awesome. Yeah. It's cool.
Yeah. So
well,
yeah.
Well, base stats on this is I'm specifically talking about Swash, but I think Realm Shifter gets something like 10 base attack per level. So if you go from 240 to 250, that's 100 base attack. Multiplied by Swash, that's actually quite a lot. So, but you're right. There's no specific skill for attack based characters past 240.
Yeah. And that's something that we touched on before, is just having something new to play with and have fun with is probably pretty important. So I can understand why people stop around that 230 to 240 and just start playing around with stuff at that point in time and don't push to 250.
Yeah.
Ultima is cool. Yeah. Oh, double Godforge chancing is massive, actually. That's a big deal. Yeah.
You're right. You're 100% right. Literally double your chances of Godforging. I mean, doubling 0% is not that much, but it's still something.
That's fair.
It's still a carrot on the end of a stick.
Yeah, it's a big deal, but it was cool, and probably I think, or I hope at least, what it has done is it's made a few people excited about their possibility of getting to 250.
Their push,
or excited about trying Endless, because I think a lot of people get a bit scared of particularly Endless, because they might not do well straight away. And to be honest, outside of the first couple of times you do a raid boss where you're feeling it out and it's maybe a bit hard, the rest of the game isn't hard.
Yeah, you're right.
Doing normal gauntlets and boss gauntlets is easy. Even when you get to a new tier, you can work it out pretty quickly. But I think people get a bit worried about doing Endless, and I hope that it's maybe in the community made people a little bit more excited about learning it, because it's the coolest thing to learn in the game, I would say. And once you start working it out and consistently getting to deeper floors, it's a real metal test. You're testing your metal properly. And when you get that cool new piece of gear, it actually makes a big difference to how deep you can get and all that sort of stuff.
I think having the three of yourselves publicly pushing Endless, I think it brought quite a lot of exposure to Endless, right? I mean, I think it's the best leveling to push to 250 in the game. I've done Endless on my alt in like around tier 8 or tier 9, and it's actually really good if you can get past maybe 450 or 60. I think it's best for keys, for like gauntlet keys, because 5 gauntlet keys to start it, you're going to get more than 5 back if you can last 50 odd floors. So even there.
But I think it can be fun. It can be really tough. I think there's like some bosses around that tier 7, tier 8 that can be particular ruined. As the Hydra is one that will just ruin you. Yeah,
which got nerfed actually. We didn't mention that's one of
the Arisen one. Did the normal one get nerfed too? Did it?
Yeah, it dropped its base HP, which for me,
that's a big deal.
I don't know if you kept track of the mobs in Endless that took you down on your push, but surely you lost a couple to Arisen Hydras.
I did as Realm. So Realm hated them. I used to as Heretic running Snotra, because the quad cuts and stuff just decimate you.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, it's not so bad just having quad cut. The problem is that it takes about, even if you've got all of the buffs on, it'll probably still take you 5 to 6 hits to actually kill the thing. So you had to not run Snotra specifically for 2 monsters, which was your Hydras and your Anubis. Anubis is a real pain in the ass. So that was a bit of a pain, but things actually changed a little bit with alignments, which was later in my push. So with Kirby getting that pet giving you alignments sort of changed it a little bit. If you go water alignment, Hydra becomes a little bit easier. Yeah. And weirdly enough, you can actually use Ice Storm against Hydras because they're not resistant to water. So you can get the weakness bonus from lightning, and you get the plus 50% damage from water alignment.
Yeah.
So they actually became a whole lot easier.
Yeah, I've been doing something similar. with but is it resistant to fire? Is that why you don't use the?
That's all it's resistant to.
Yeah,
I was
right, okay.
absolutely amazed to see that it wasn't resistant to water. I think
Yeah.
on
Okay.
main, I said to somebody, and it might have been Albert, I think, had showed a picture of him using Ice Storm, and I'm like, I've always used Quake Storm because I thought they were resistant to water, but it was just an assumption I'd made. They weren't. They're not resistant to water.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is odd. There's a few enemies out there that blow my mind like that, like Leviathans you can hit with water. With fire. You can hit Leviathans with fire, and they don't resist it. But yeah, they were always a run and for sure pre-change. So that was a welcome change because they don't give you much horns, they don't give you much XP. They just hurt.
Big thing there that helped your push, I think, is having that. Well, you had a couple of friends doing the same thing. For me, it was a bit different. I had one guy on my regional leaderboard who was ahead of me. He's actually still ahead of me. He's number one, Yoshimitsu. He's been number one on my regional since I started playing. But I hit 250, I think, September, around autumn last year. So around autumn 2020. And
wow.
I had, but again, with the COVID situation, I had a lot more free time to start the push. But I definitely didn't do 238 to 250 in 1 month. That is, that's a bit crazy. But looking back, I don't know. I was catching up to Yoshimitsu a little bit, and that was the motivator for me, trying to pass him and then trying to get 250 ahead of him. And he was always, I think the closest I got was within 2 levels at one point. I think I was around 240 and he was like 242 or 243 or something. But at that point, the big thing was hard boss mode dungeons. And I was actually using Gilgamesh to do this predominantly. With Siphon Ward, you can get mana really easily. Worst case scenario, you use Diffuse Ward to regain mana. So I was doing that, and it was probably just the safest way to get lots of experience. So that was my biggest use. That was my biggest thing. I didn't actually start doing endless until around 245, 246. But yeah, I mean, my push took months, and actually I went so hard at the start of COVID trying to catch up Yoshimitsu. I got to, I think, 241 or 242, and I just had to stop playing. I was done. I took literally 1 month off just doing kingdom stuff like wars and gauntlets. I think I genuinely considered stopping playing the game completely. So that was kind of the end of my super crazy push to try and catch Yoshimitsu. And to be fair, he was plugging on, and I don't know if he was like top 10 to reach 250, but definitely either top 10 or top 15. I think I was the 17th. I remember my position in the Hall of Fame or whatever.
Is that still going? I had thought of that thing recently.
I think the guy's doing it, Rodrigo. I think he got a bit busy, but he did do an update at the end of February. Maybe he's doing it every month, which is, by the way, some ridiculous effort because he's doing that manually, which is amazing.
Yeah, and most of the announcements are either just a screenshot or no one announcing it whatsoever. So I don't know how you actually pull it together. Okay. So did you get to take advantage of the water spawns in T10 to get keys for your hard boss?
I did a little bit, but not to like a ridiculous amount. I always had, what I would do I remember going on lunch breaks at work, but this was during the winter, going on lunch breaks to the river, down to the River Clyde, and I could farm keys there for half an hour, 45 minutes or so, but my hands would freeze within about 5 minutes. So I was like, I'm not going to sit here all day and do it. I got a few keys that way, but what we would do, I would do like I would do a few days of just normal boss dungeons at tier 10, and they were very much key positive, get quite a few keys out of that, and then gear up line up with temples or line up with events, do like a massive 1 day hard boss mode dungeon, shrines, everything.
They're still good,
push.
man. I did
They are still good.
one recently. I did a day, and I think it might have only been something like 25 hard boss gauntlets. I can't remember that. I'd have to go and have a look at the count, but it was over 30 billion XP, and it was easy. Like,
exactly.
When you get into a rhythm with those, you're not failing them.
Pretty safe.
You know.
I think you're right. I think it was roughly, depending what kind of tombs you had, it was around 1 billion XP per dungeon, which not too bad. Again, it helps if you have a lot of dungeons available near you. Then you can do like a big push in a day or so. Whereas endless, you don't necessarily need to have 30 dungeons within.
No, I used 4, which is more than most people. So I have 2 plus my keep and menu.
Yeah. So you didn't even need to leave the house.
No. Yeah, that makes it easier because with endless, and again, just to carry on about the point again, it's all about rhythm for me. I'll get full superstitious about changing a piece of gear. So that home stats buff is actually a pretty big deal.
Yeah,
so
right.
Even going from that to just owning the dukedom actually can affect you a little bit. I will always make sure if I'm going to do an endless in a spot, I will take that dukedom because I don't care about areas that much. So it's all my friends that own them anyway. I just send them a text if I'm going to take their thing to do an endless gauntlet. And I'm like, you can take it back this afternoon. I just want to do it right now. Those stats matter. But yeah, also, if you're going to do 4 endless a day, I can bet you don't really want to do that many more. By that point in time, you're pretty sick of them.
I got sick of hard mode boss dungeons. Yeah. I think changing up is a really good idea, isn't it? I mean, unless you're so focused on doing it the most efficient way possible, having a day of endless, having a day of boss mode, having a day of hard mode, switch it up a little bit. It probably takes it probably does take the fatigue out of the grind a little bit. Switch things up, always good.
Switching it up and only doing it when you're actually motivated to do it. Don't push it when you don't feel like doing it. That's going to take the joy out instantly. So yeah, I agree, and that's exactly what I'd do. I think in my push, and I'll have to send you the screens of it at some point, but I had, out of the 36 days, 4 days of actually 0 XP where I didn't touch the game at all.
Yeah.
I had 3 days below 10 billion, which means I only did 1 endless each day. I had 4 additional days where I only did 2 endless that were around 13 to 16 billion XP. And I still averaged 42 billion a day.
Huge.
Because I don't think, like, I can push it really, really, really hard, but I can only do that when I feel in that zone to do it. And I don't think that it's healthy to do anything in this game when you're not feeling it. What Mage is just saying about the rhythm, that's a really big deal to me.
Do it when you feel like it. Having some kind of other person helping you along, whether that's by you wanting to beat them to a certain milestone, or you're all kind of doing it together. Yeah, all kind of helps.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. So I've got friends now who are a little bit excited. One guy in my kingdom, I think he's in this chat at the moment. Chemical Frost, I think he is in Twitter, but the in-game, he's pretty keen to push it now. And I said, mate, I'll go for a drive with you whenever you want, and we'll just sit there. I'm happy to sit in the car in one spot for an hour while you do your endless. That's fine. Because I think like having that extra body makes it just more engaging, more fun, all that sort of stuff. But yeah, it's nice to be here, man. And that's how I did it.
Now everybody's going to do the same way.
Well, they can shout out. They can shout out if they need help. You've shown some really good videos on how to do it with a couple of builds. it's a little bit different because I think the what would you call it? There's not as much pressure on you, I guess, when you run through a video like that, because if you die on floor 80, you don't care. But for somebody who's running through it, if they die on floor 80 when they aimed to die on 150, it can be frustrating.
I didn't plan on dying at floor 80, but
it wasn't meant to call out a specific scenario.
Zerk Gradlin, he's still Zerk Gradlin, you know?
Oh, Gradlins, man. Goddamn Geralds. Yeah, but there's so many people out there now that have done them. Just come and talk to people about it in the main Discord. Or, you know, if you want to send me a message and ask me about it, you can. You want to send Major a message, I'm sure he'll walk you through what he did. There's heaps of people on the main Discord who would be more than happy to chat with people to take them through what they're doing. And you know, you want to send me a message because you can't work out what to do with the one floor that you're on. What are they immune to? What are they weak to? Whatever. Oh hell, I don't care if I'm awake. But yeah, it's good fun, man, and I'd encourage people to give it a crack at bare minimum. You know, don't dodge that part of the game, because that's some of the funnest content in the entire game.
Absolutely agree. Love it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
What about wrapping things up a little bit, moving on to future plans for this nice little conversation? What are your thoughts, Dangy? This was kind of your idea. What have you got in mind?
Well, I guess for this, I think this could be a really good tool to engage the community with themselves a lot more, right? So you're already doing content, which is pretty awesome content, and you know, comes from a really experienced person. So that's fantastic. But this right here, we could have potentially people come on, have a chat with us about different things that think differently to us, because I always get blown away reading through the different builds that people have, the different ideas they have. You could take a quick scroll through suggestions or debate and find a whole heap of gold in there about what people think about what could happen for the future of the game, what they think about what's currently happening for the game. And I think that this is a really good space to do that. I think to explore that verbally and have a proper conversation around some of that stuff, that'd be great. I'd like it to be with some sort of regular interval, like you said. If we can base it around twice a month to cover any serious stuff that comes out, that sounds amazing.
Yeah,
to me. Similar thoughts from yourself? Or
I agree 100%. Yeah, I think what you said there, like, people play the game so differently. For what seems like kind of a limited game, you know, only one dev, there's actually a lot of depth to it, and there's no one way to play the game.
No.
Love to see people's other takes on it, and it's also dependent on RNG as well, what people get, what they might make use of. Something.
Yeah.
Of course, if you play the game enough, you'll get every item, but someone might make slightly with the same items. You might have done something completely differently. So yeah, getting those views.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, we're not just looking for Arisen folk. Anyone?
No, definitely not.
Yeah, if anyone's keen to get involved for a nice little chat, we're not necessarily restricted to Mondays either. We'll be as flexible as possible, I reckon.
Mm-hmm.
Try and accommodate as many people as we can.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. We've got one person in particular in mind who has a lot of input into the game that hopefully we'll get at one point in the future. But
I wonder who has a lot of input in the game.
That would be great.
It would be amazing. It would be phenomenal. No, I think that there's a lot of scope for this, to be honest, and just having a couple of guys chatting right now is really touching. It's awesome to see that you've built a good audience here already. So we can lean on these guys, and you know, maybe we need to set something up. Shabbash, it has maybe a Twitter that people could send through content ideas or questions to or something like that, or maybe you've
definitely.
already got an Orna Legends Twitter on the go.
Yeah, something like that. Something to engage chat as well. We've not called out that many people in the chat. A couple of comments here and there, but appreciate everybody following. We were kind of planning to do like a little Q&A, but there's kind of been questions here and there throughout the whole thing. If people have feedback on like what they prefer, if they'd like, ideally we'd have one person collecting questions through the whole thing, and then we come up with it at the end. But at the moment, we didn't manage to get that sorted in time. So potentially for the next one, if there's somebody who wants to get involved and just kind of, accumulate a list of questions that we can ask Dangy or whoever comes on. How would you do this? How do you do that? Blah, blah, blah. What's your favorite kind of fruit? All this kind of stuff. That'd be great. But any closing thoughts, Dangy?
Thank you for having me on your channel, on your Twitch channel. It'd be great if and I think the plan is to get this uploaded somewhere, whether definitely. It's just a VOD here or YouTube or somewhere else. Appreciate the audience coming along and having a listen, guys. This is my face. Nice to meet you all. But yeah, big thank you to yourself and to the community in general, because it's been one of my favorite things, the whole Orna experience over the last couple of years. And I'm just excited to have something that I might be able to contribute back toward that experience for others. So yeah, looking forward to doing this again sometime very soon.
Awesome. Brilliant. No, thanks for pushing the idea. I think it's great. Have a nice, gentle discussion. Having something a little bit different for people to listen to, because there's a lot of passionate people about this game. Absolutely brilliant. I think without the initial setup to get kind of extra stuff from chat, I think unless you want to talk for another 2 minutes, Dangy, I'm gonna have to run out into another room.
No. Are you keeping your stream going? Because I can talk to the chat for a sec, but otherwise we can wrap it up.
All right, you talk for 2 seconds. You're Aussie, you like to do that, so I'll be back in a second.
I do like to talk. So appreciate you guys coming along. Is there any questions that you have now, guys, that you'd like us to maybe cover? I'm going to say tonight, because it's late at night for me this morning. For a lot of you US state-based people, is there anything that you'd like to run through, or anything that you'd like to leave us as a parting thought for us to go through potentially next time? And I'm not super used to Twitch myself, but I'm sitting here monitoring the chat to see if there's anything. I might have a quick scroll through to see if there was anything that we didn't quite touch on. Through the most interesting pet name you've seen. Are you just inviting Pooh Man to give us his list of lobsters? I think that's what that's trying to get us to show. There are a few good ones that I've seen out there. That could be a good one for sure. Just scrolling through the questions or the chat. I've been watching the numbers as this has gone. There's been consistently 12 to 13 people the entire time. I'm really stoked there's been people who are interested in listening for an entire 2-hour stint, so really appreciate that, guys. Adolf Twitler is Pooh. How did I not know? Definitely interesting. So Gilgamage in 4 days, Pooh. I'm interested to hear what that means, mate. Or that might be context from previous in the conversation. Nominate Major to collect the questions. I would also nominate Major to collect the questions. Major stays up much later than Major should stay up, I think, because Major's based in Canada, and Major seems to be on the Australian time zone a lot of the time. So I'll often be awake, and it'll be 1 a.m., 2 a.m. for me, and I think that's around 7 a.m. for Major, and he still hasn't gone to sleep. So I think that's a good nomination, is that Major should help us with the questions. We'll see what he thinks. He might have already gone to bed. Scroll through. Yeah, Dan. So Dan made the point, and this would have been probably in the depths of the Endless conversation about how he hears that Endless converts players from melee to mage. And Dan, it's really interesting because it does. And some of us, it converts from melee to mage kicking and screaming because we have this weird fixation from probably previous games that I am only a melee player and I will never be a mage, right? Like it's this really odd thing that you get uppity about. In reality, for this game, most of us play it with animations off. So the entire game, it doesn't matter what class you play, it's just whichever button you push produces the largest number. It actually works out the same. And for us, for me, when I was running through Endless, it was a big deal is going through and knowing that I was actually limiting myself because I couldn't get as deep as a mage could really easily without much effort. So it's something that did convert me. But the side effect of that, or the byproduct, is I hadn't played mage since Necro was overpowered a long time ago, and now I get to enjoy a whole new element of the game. I get to enjoy something that I was missing out on in a sense because magic sucks, but now I get to enjoy it, so it's fun. And Major, yeah, currently 6:13 a.m. I'm about to sleep soon. I'm pretty sure that you were not going to stay up to listen to this anyway because you were meant to be asleep, Major. But yeah, I also don't blame Shabbash for thinking that you're an Aussie because, mate, you're on our time zone.
Just never asleep.
Just never asleep. He says he's going to sleep now, but I reckon that I'll see a post from him in 2 hours' time. Interested in hearing some more war defense setup theories. That's actually a great topic, and I might actually write that down because war defense is a lot more. It's a lot more in depth than people probably give it credit for. I think a lot of people will get into the trap of thinking, well, you're versing an AI, they're always at a disadvantage, which is true, but that doesn't mean that you actually can't set it up in a way that gives you or puts you in an advantageous position even with the AI operating things. And I use a bot in my kingdom, and a couple of other people do, that track your war wins on both offense and defense.
Yeah.
And my defense win rate, which is going to sound bad when you hear it, but it's something like 65%. But that's as a king of one of the higher ranking kingdoms, so I constantly am getting paired against quite high opponents, but I'm still winning defense more than 50% of the time. So I think that there's definitely a topic to talk about. I know that Shabbash, I've seen a few of your posts with the Scottish flag against other flags and how you've got your running tally of the people that you've beaten on defense. So I'm going to definitely write that topic down as one that we need to cover.
Yeah, Strad, that's a brilliant.
At a future date.
Yeah, Strad, that's a brilliant shout, I think.
Yep.
We didn't want to talk about Swash at the moment, but I can't help myself. People were saying Swash is OP, but I've taken down some of the highest level players in the game with them attacking as Swash. Swash is not OP.
No.
You can blow on a Swash and it'll fall over. So yeah,
that's exactly right.
War defense also ties in nicely with area defense. That's probably, I think now it's probably one of the biggest GPS sides of the game. Initially when I started, that was the biggest hook for me, like being able to take areas from other players. So again, I know people who have thousands and thousands of areas. They really love that side of the game actually, and that could be an interesting one. Trying to get, we could actually try and scope someone out who has, I don't know, something more than 10,000, something more than 100,000 areas. That could be a nice thing to have on. That'd be funny. But yeah, I think that's a great topic.
Yeah, yep.
Get that written down, yeah.
I like it a lot.
Mind games.
Well, mind games is a really interesting one. Yeah, like we'll go through that whole topic because you could talk about it right now if you wanted to. But yeah, I think maybe we carry that over. Because to be honest, guys, I think our original plan was we had no idea how well this would flow and how long it'd go for. And we're like, maybe half an hour to 60 minutes and we'll see what happens. But
But now it's past.
I've been having way too much fun.
Yeah, now it's past your bedtime.
Yeah, it's past midnight, but much like the bulk of the Orna community, I'm not an early sleeper in the slightest, so this isn't a big problem.
Brilliant.
It's just been good fun.
It's been really good fun.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, again, we can be flexible around time zones, maybe, because this is probably the worst time possible for probably the largest player base, North America. But not too bothered about that personally.
I think we'll work it out. Obviously, we've got to be able to be online ourselves, but if we can also just make sure that it's available in even just a audio and hopefully on YouTube as well, that'll help a lot of people. But the engagement live is brilliant.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah, this will be going up on YouTube hopefully today. But yeah, live engagement as well is good fun, and a lot of people have really good points to make.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, all right. Well, on that, and it is past midnight for me. Shall we wrap up? And I'm sure you might still be streaming, but shall we wrap up at bare minimum the podcast side of things on a high?
Yeah, been super high all morning.
Yeah, it's been fantastic.
Yeah, it's been good.
Thanks again.
Now, cheers, Dangy, for getting this kind of set up, and looking forward to the next one.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, thanks heaps, guys. Catch you on the next one.
All right, cheers, Dangy. Catch you later, buddy.
Bye.
I'm just gonna quickly play some alerts, guys. Hope you found that really fun. I found that really fun. I don't know if people are kind of waking up or going to bed. Just gotta thank some new followers. Thanks some Flux TV. Thanks for the Prime. Moise, thanks for the tier 1 sub as well. Flux, loved how that went. Worked perfectly to my day. That's awesome, mate. I hope people. I think it went pretty well. We didn't really have that much planned beforehand, but as the first one, I think it went pretty well. Again, I think a lot of people in the chat, you kind of know where to find myself or Dangy on the Discord. So again, any ideas that you guys have, anything you want covered. Adolf Tweetler, thanks for the Pooh Man, thanks for the Prime. Yeah, we're pretty keen to cover. So this will be going up on YouTube. I think I'm away to get some lunch. Anyone still in chat, I hope you have a really good day if you're just waking up. Is there any reason for a Gilgamesh to have low ward? What a question. How long do you... I was just about to have lunch. Honestly, I don't know if anyone's actually done this, but if you can get ward to something like 2%, to 2, and then you could... I've not actually tried it, but it's something I wanted to try. Then you could get to like maximum power within 1 turn, but if you have only 1 ward, the passive doesn't actually work. Oh, Dangy's still there. Dangy's still there. Famed Arisen Starter Shield. I mean, Famed, you need something a little bit better than a Famed. Someone in my area only has 6k. If you that much ward, like low wards to that extent, nah, you're not helpful at all as a Gilgamesh to anyone. Yeah, Legendary Arisen Starter Shield, 99% negative ward. But you're still gonna have more than 1 ward. Then you run 0 ward turns. Oh, really? Huh. Oh, I see what you're saying, Modangy. So literally no ward, you just run maximum defense resistance from the shield, huh? Okay, interesting. Max passive all the time, yeah. Interesting. Nice build. Not so good on the PvP side, I think, but for raiding, that sounds like a nice little trick. Everybody's got to wait until Surtur comes back to get 99% Arisen Surtur shields now. You're going to need a bunch of them actually to make sure it gives you the exact amount you need. All right, folks. We're gonna call it there. Thanks again, everybody tuned into the podcast. It's going to go up on YouTube, hopefully by today, if not tomorrow at the latest. Any further insight, contact Modangy or myself on Discord. Hope you all have a good day, a good evening, wherever you are. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Ciao.